the guide today for this particular session. So a little bit about me real quickly. I live in Chicago. I was in the corporate world for a long time, have now retired from that full-time gig and am trying to enjoy life more. And I've always been interested in financial topics and things along those lines. And that's the genesis for this class, for this session that we're having. I would like it to be interactive. Ideally, we learn from each other. So if you can have your cameras on, I understand some of us can't, but if you can have your cameras on, that would be great. Just so everyone's aware, this class is being recorded. It's primarily for me and for training purposes, but if you would like a copy of the session, you can request it. The email address is help@getsetup.io. I'm referencing it now with my cursor. And if anyone is joining us live stream on Facebook, welcome. If you do want to be more interactive in our classes and be able to ask questions as we go or give comments, you can sign up directly with Get Set Up. Typically in this class, we won't talk about many products. Maybe one or two will come up. Maybe you have some questions. But just so everybody's aware, Get Set Up does not pay or get paid by any products for any endorsements or any conversations on comments that we may have. So ideally what I'd like to do is just set up the class a little bit more, give you the agenda, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. If anybody wants to say a few comments about themselves, maybe where they're from and what they would like to get out of this class, that would be perfect. So let me just set up the agenda. The first part of the session is going to be about rethinking ingrained habits. Sometimes we just sort of get in habits and we sort of are afraid to get out of some habits. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about some shopping alternatives. And then we're going to look at some home expenses and some general expenses. I sort of lump them in under home expenses. So that's the path we're going to take today to help us in regards to reducing expenses. So I just want to emphasize to you, what we're going to talk about is a lot of ideas and hopefully stimulate some thought. Hopefully some of you will interact with the class and speak up. You have other ideas, or you've used some of these ideas that we've talked about. I don't expect anyone to think all these ideas are great or to try to incorporate them all, but the whole point is to figure out which ones may help you and help you with your lifestyle. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to all of you, or anybody who wants to say a few words about themselves. That would be great. Anybody want to go first? That's always the hardest. Go ahead, Melissa. You're volunteering. I appreciate it. You're on mute though. Melissa, you're on mute. Melissa, you were on mute when you were talking. Can you unmute yourself? Thank you.
I'm from Virginia. I'm from Williamsburg, Virginia, which is between Richmond and Virginia Beach.
All right, nice area of the country. I was there a couple of years.
What else do you want to know?
Okay. Well, you live in a nice area of the country, so we were vacationing there a few years ago. Very nice.
It's a good place to live.
All right. Thanks for joining us. So anybody else want to say a few words?
Hey, Philip and everyone. This is Judy, and I live in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and I'm retired. So I'm looking forward to this class and see how I can reduce expenses.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll get a few ideas out of it. So I grew up about 100 miles south of Cocoa Beach, so familiar with that area.
Beautiful.
Yes. All right. Anybody else want to say a few words? All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. So also Max is on the line. He is also with Get Set Up, and he's part of the team. So he'll help us here with any questions anything you have, just make sure the flow goes well. So please unmute yourself, ask questions if you like. If you'd rather ask questions through the chat, Max and I will both be looking at the chat box so we can handle questions in any shape or form that you are comfortable with doing so. So with that, let's talk about those rethinking ingrained habits. So I think the very first one we have is the renewal process that we have. You know, back when most of us were growing up, if you wanted to renew something, it took some active work from us. We had to send back a piece of mail saying, yes, please renew. Here's my check for the next year or for the next 6 months or whatever. As we know now, that's not the way that things happen now in the information age. Renewals just sort of come automatically. You may or may not get a notice through email just confirming that you have a renewal. And then the bigger thing is that renewal may be sort of unsurprised and unsupported, and it may be at a lot higher rate than you were paying the last 12-month period. It's not uncommon for renewals to just sort of pop up at a higher rate without much knowledge or information or forewarning. So I think this just gives us time to think about, as we do renew things, you know, even if the price stays steady, are we getting the value out of a renewal that for something that we have been using in the past and maybe we haven't used it very much anymore? Just things to think about. You know, maybe a good example, you know, over the next few months, hopefully we get out of the pandemic. A lot of us have, you know, have subscribed to a lot of other alternate TV modes, maybe Hulu, Netflix, Disney Plus, all those different features that we have. And maybe we're getting a great value out of them now because we're still mostly at home. But, you know, as we pull out of the quarantine stage of our lives and we start going out more, being with friends, going out more to restaurants or shows or movies, you know, maybe we're not going to get as much value out of Hulu or out of Netflix as we have in the past. Or, you know, maybe one or two of them might be great, but to have 4 or 5 different services, streaming services, might not be the smartest use of our money. So just be thinking about it, not saying whether to continue with things or not continue with things, but just be thinking about, are you getting the value out of all those services as our life maybe changes? And, you know, I'll give you a personal example. I have Sirius satellite radio, and somehow I did not get an alert that my renewal was up early this year. And all of a sudden, I realized that they started charging my credit card 50% more than I had been paying the month before. I got charged by the month, was the way I had the program. And all of a sudden I was getting charged 50% more. So diligent little me, I picked up the phone and said, you know, what's going on? I didn't know about a renewal. What's the service price? And so we talked through it. It took less than 5 minutes of my time. At the end of the day, they ended up bringing the price back down to exactly what I was paying the prior year. And not only did they do that, they actually gave me a rebate for the 1 month they had charged more on it. So all that took less than 5 minutes of my time. You know, they were very polite. I was very polite, professional. The conversation went smooth. And I bring this up because a lot of us know 3, 4, even, you know, 5 years ago, customer service wasn't quite king like it is now. And if you tried to suspend or change a service via the telephone, a lot of times it was not a comfortable or an easy conversation. You really had to be persistent and maybe get a little feisty with somebody on the other end. With almost all companies now, that is not the case. They understand how important customer service is. They understand how important getting positive feedback is on the internet. And most of these conversations will go smoothly. Yeah, I will say in my conversation, they did try to give me another layer of service somewhere between what they had charged me and what I really wanted. And I just politely said, no, I don't use my car that much. even without the pandemic, and I just want this basic service that I had before. And, they agreed to do that. But the big takeaway is think about it. Don't just automatically renew. And if the service isn't what you want it to be, don't be afraid that it's going to be a difficult conversation. With almost all vendors now, they understand customer service is king. I gave this class last week, and one of the people that was attending is a customer service person. This is what he does for a living on the phone. And, he elaborated that indeed, they have certain points that they want to try to cover, but they understand that they need to be polite and professional, because the worst thing they have is bad feedback on the internet about bad service. Good morning, Sandy. I see you have your hand up.
There are a lot of companies nowadays that have a very slim customer service department. And those companies make it very difficult for you to make any changes to your account. Case in point is Robinhood, which I just saw a story on yesterday. They make it very difficult for you to make any changes. And they don't have a physical staff answering the phones.
Yeah, there's still a few exceptions, Sandy, and you're absolutely right. That's not a service that you have to have. Obviously, for those not familiar, Robinhood, that's where you buy and sell stock. So it's a stock brokerage thing. So, those are pretty easy to move away from if indeed you don't feel you're getting good service. But generally, for most of them, they understand the customer service aspect and the importance of it a lot better. But there are still a few bad apples out there, Sandy, as you referenced, so to speak. So we just need to continue to think about that and see what happens. So, but I appreciate the input. Any other comments on what we're talking about right now? So the same really goes for, we talked about this being stuff over the internet, but the same goes for maybe a gym membership. Maybe the gym has been closed for quite some time and you have a new workout pattern. Maybe you don't need the gym anymore, or you found an alternative source of being able to work out outside and enjoy it more, whatever. I'm not saying don't renew the membership. Just think about it. Is it worth the value when you do need to re-up the membership? And, all this goes with cable, phone service, newspaper services, magazines, subscriptions, all those things. Most of them now just automatically self-renew, and you just need to be diligent and just, like I said, think about it for a couple of minutes. Are you getting your money's worth for it? If you are, great, renew it. If you aren't, think about canceling it. So another, yes, Sandy.
Also, if they already have your credit card number, are they really going to give you a refund if you want to cancel?
You can always stop the credit card from continuing. Like I said, with my experience with Sirius Radio, they did charge me more at the renewal, and they credited my account. We actually talked about it, and I just told the gentleman, just don't charge me, until the credit's up. And sure enough, that they did not charge me the next month, and then the following month it was only a percentage of it. So again, my experience with Sirius was very positive from that standpoint. But you do have to monitor your credit card once you have talked with them to make sure that it's going correctly. You're absolutely right. So the next one I will tell you for sure is my wife's least favorite one, and I call it one in, one out. So that really started, we live in a condo, so we have limited space. We have lots of storage or lots of closet space for a condo, but we don't have a big garage or a big attic or a big basement to store stuff with. So it sort of started out with clothes, just sort of saying, if you're going to buy something new, you got to get rid of something, right? If you want to buy a new pair of pants, you got to get rid of a pair of pants. And it sort of expanded to the entire house. Okay. If we want to buy a new candle holder. We don't have any place to store it if we're not going to use it all the time. So what are we going to get rid of? But really what it also does, it makes you think just a little bit away from that impulse buying and makes you think, okay, I do have, using my example, we do have a candle holder now. Is this one really, are we going to use this more? Is it worth the additional money? Do I want to get rid of the other one? It just slows you down and makes you sort of think about the value this product is adding. And if indeed you say, yes, you know what, I'm going to enjoy this one a lot more. The item we have now is relatively old. We don't use it because it's older. We can store it. We have the space. All that stuff is fine. That's fine. I'm not saying we're here to enjoy life, right? Most of us have worked for a lot of years during our life, and we're now in a phase where we can spend more time enjoying life. And I am not in any way, shape, or form trying to take away from that. I take advantage of enjoying life myself right now. I want to continue to do it. And I want all of us to continue to do that. But the point is just make sure that what you're doing is worth it. A lot of the younger crowd now, our children and grandchildren, and people like Max that's helping us here, they talk about experiences are worth a lot more to them than hard goods. Going on a vacation, going out to a restaurant with friends, meeting at a park and going bicycling. Those experiences are worth a lot more. And a lot of times they actually cost less on top of it, but they're trending that way. Let's us not get too old and stay, in our habits. And, let's take some good points from some of our younger generation and enjoy some experiences more so than just material goods that a lot of us used before to help us enjoy life more. So just think about it. Another thing to think about, this one's a little bit tough, but the credit card information online. Jeff Bezos and Amazon came up with this, and they know exactly what they're doing. They're kings of retail, but it's basically the one-click shopping. They have your credit card information there. All you do is you barely touch the screen, and all of a sudden you've bought something. I'm not saying not to do that. I'm just saying, if there's some website you use constantly and you need things from there, that one click is great. But if you have some other websites that you use sporadically, if you do need to go get your wallet or your purse, go get your credit card, punch in the 16-digit number, punch in the 3 or 4-digit security code, give the expiration date. It just gives you some time to think, is this something that I really want, that I really need, or is it super impulse buying? We know once we buy things on the internet, it's a pain in the butt to, for some of us anyway, to return it. We got to pack it back up, put the label in, get a return sticker and all that. It may not cost much, but it's sort of like a little bit of a pain. So a lot of us, once we buy something on the internet, we bought it. So just think about it. Just slow it down some. You also have some security issues. If a lot of different websites have your credit card information, and indeed one of them gets hacked, your credit card is out there, and you have some additional challenges. I give another program with Get Set Up for about scams and frauds, and there is a lot of bad people out there trying to get information, and the more even legitimate places you have your credit card with, the more likely you are to get hacked. Not because they're not trying to be secure, and not because you're not trying to be secure, but there are a lot of smart people out there spending a lot of time on not good ventures. And then finally, the last thing we have on here is an accountability buddy. So if you are doing something and it's just a really hard habit for you to break, maybe talk with a close personal friend and come up with an agreement that if you're having a challenge one day, you're going to give them a call or email them and talk to them about it. And they probably have some habit or something that you can help them with too, but just something to think about, and it just builds a stronger bond with some friends that you have now anyway. So those are some of the things about ingrained habits. What else in this area? Anybody else have any other ideas or any questions or any real world comments they want to talk about in regards to the ideas we've just presented? All right, well, let's go next to some shopping alternatives. So the first one I want to talk about is called the grace period. Some of you may have heard of this, and there's 2 or 3 variations of this, but this is basically for, I think primarily the best use of this is for some larger items. You know, so let's say you have a TV that's working fairly well. It's a little bit old now. There's a lot of new technology, and you decide you want to go buy a new TV. You see one you like. It's a little bit bigger screen, got some more electronic features to it, and it costs $600. So the thought with the grace period is that you don't buy it right away. You think about it. So one of the ideas is for every, say, $50, you give it a day to think about. So in this experience where we're talking about a $600 TV, you would give it basically 2 weeks. So you would not do anything for 2 weeks. And then at the end of 2 weeks, you come back and you think about it. And if your heart is still set on buying this TV, you think it's worth it, you think the $600 is a fair value, go for it. You've given it some thought. It clearly is not an impulse purchase. Go ahead and buy it. Another similar variation to this is that when you go and look at the TV, same story, $600, you put $600 in your savings account or your emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, and then you wait for 2 weeks or a month, whatever time period you feel is appropriate. And then if you still think that you want that TV and it's worth it, you pull the money out of your savings account that you just put it in, and you go buy it. But if you decide, you know what, my TV is still fine, it's not worth the extra $600, you leave that money in your savings account or emergency fund, and you funded some additional money into your savings account from doing that. So those are different variations on the grace periods. Anybody done something like this or some other variation that, and again, it's just something you customize how you want to make it work. Any other thoughts on the grace period thinking? Nobody's tried anything similar? Okay. So then another similar thing is to link savings with splurging. So this is, I don't know, most of us have some kind of weakness. Maybe I like electronics a little more than I should. So, the thought process is if I buy some electronic piece of equipment, say I have a fairly new iPhone, but I want the newer model, and I go out and buy it, that I promise myself I'm gonna do that 10% of what I paid for the price for, I'm gonna put into my savings. So at least I'm gonna get some benefit out of my impulse buying. So if I, buy a, $500 phone, sort of from an impulse standpoint, I put $50 into my savings account. So at least I've got some good out of it. So again, just another alternative. It's a cousin of the grace period, I would say, in a similar way. So another thing to think about is the total cost of a purchase. So, there's a couple of good examples. One might be the newer coffee machines that you get with the pods. So I don't drink coffee, but I'll use my wife as an experience. She likes coffee. She loves coffee. And, a few years ago, went to some friend's house. They had the pods, had the machine. She had a cup of coffee. She really liked it. So we went out shopping for, what would fit. Again, we live in a condo. We don't have the world's biggest kitchen. So we had to find something that was fairly compact. We found something we liked. Now, what we realize, of course, as we're talking about it, is now these pods cost about $1 a piece. So the coffee machine is absolutely no good, unless you buy the pods. Pods are $1 a piece. So if you have, 2 cups of coffee 3 days a week, whatever. we decided that she liked the machine. She liked what was going on. We bought it. No problem. She buys pods regularly, but we understood before we spent a couple $100 on the machine that we would have back end costs on a regular basis buying those pods. It's no different than buying coffee if you're going to make it the old fashioned way, but it just costs a little bit more. The pods are more than, buying some ground coffee. The same concept, just understand what you're talking about. Another example in this area might be printers or copy machines, the printers we buy to go with our computer. If you've done some research on that, really where a lot of the printing companies make their money isn't on buying the printer, it's on the ink that you must buy afterwards. And if you do a little research, you might find out that very cheap printer that doesn't cost much money up front eats up the ink like crazy. And maybe if you buy a more expensive printer on the front end, going against all my ideas of trying to save money, but if you buy a more expensive printer on the front end, you may end up saving money with a lot less ink on the back end. And that's not with all products, but you can do a little research and sort of figure that out. So my point is that the cheapest product isn't always the best product for long-term maintenance and success, whether it be something like a printer or even a piece of electronics that has bad customer service or has a bad history of not lasting very long. Maybe you spend a little more on a better product that will last longer. So another concept is no spend days. And this is one area that I have not done. When I was researching some information for this class, came up upon it, and I have to tell you that it didn't make much sense to me at first, because basically it says you promise yourself, you wake up in the morning, you say, I'm not going to spend any money today. If on the way home I decide I need a can of corn to help me make that recipe I'm going to make tonight, you don't buy it. You don't go out for lunch. You're just not going to spend any money at all. So to me, that didn't make a whole bunch of sense, because I said, all I do is go buy, the things I didn't buy today, I just go buy them tomorrow. So where's the value in the no spend days? But then I started thinking about it a little bit more. And there's some things, like if you go to Starbucks, buy a cup of coffee, if you don't buy it today, you can buy it tomorrow, but you're not going to buy twice as much tomorrow. Or if you don't, especially when we were working out away from home, if you go out for lunch and go to a restaurant and buy lunch, and you don't do that today, that is some money saved. But then the bigger value of it is you start understanding that sometimes you can find some alternatives, and you don't have to necessarily buy as much. And it just sort of breaks you out of that habit of, oops, I'm just going to stop at the store and pick this up or pick that up, and has you get a little more creative. I've had some people in this class talk about, yes, it also almost becomes a game with their spouse or partner, and they both agree, let's try to do 3 no spend days in a row, both of us, and see if we can both do that or have a little game. And it just sort of has you rethink how you purchase things and why you purchase things, more importantly. And I think going back to the last topic, Karen has just put in the chat box, Walmart has some plastic pods that you can put ground coffee in. So there you go. So there's a good example of another way to save money. You can actually get the pods. And Karen, I was not aware of that. So that's a good thing. So again, just thinking of different ways to do what you were doing before. So has anybody done the no spend days, or have a close friend that has done them and can maybe comment a little bit more on how that works and the emotional concept of the no spend days, how that works? Nobody can help me out in this class with that? Okay.
I have done the no spend days. And what I have done is picked the days I had to go do my shopping, I make a list of the 4 places I need to go, and I go get what's on my list. Once in a while, I go off the list and I decide not to return to the store for the next 4 days for any reason. And it works very well.
Well, thank you so much, Petra, for reinforcing the concept. And that's the whole idea, just for us to share things like Karen just did about the plastic pods, or Petra about their experience. Like I said, I don't have all the answers here, and I really want all of us to continue to share. So please don't be afraid to speak up and give some good ideas or some things that you tried that didn't work for you too. That's just as valuable to understand also. So, I appreciate comments and continuing to share.
Philip, this is Karen. Can you hear me?
I can.
Oh, wonderful. My husband and I just recently decided to step up and buy the new Epson printer. We saw Shaq on a commercial. We think he's funny on all his commercials. However, on this particular, I was using a lot of ink. I'm starting a home business, and I'm going through so many of those cartridges, and they're so expensive. It's really, unnecessary money, in my opinion. So we went and bought that little Epson printer. It's nice and compact. It was a little under $500. We got it at Best Buy. However, it also came with these liquid ink. And it was not just the liquid ink that you put into it, and it's supposed to last something like 10 times longer than having the cartridges. It also came with an extra, set of bottles. And I'm still using it for, I think we've had it a couple months already. So I can't, say that it lasts 10 times longer. However, it was very easy to set up. And we've been happy with it so far. So I think that, you're totally right about looking at the cost up front, instead of buying a cheaper printer. And then you have to go out and buy all these, cartridges, and they only last so long. It's very irritating when you have to put up so much money.
Right. Yeah. There's that concept, they call it loss leaders. They get you to buy at the front end, knowing they're going to make money at the back end. And, there was one well-known national, printer company that a couple of years ago got into some big trouble because, the computers will set up where you can get updates to the printers. And, they made it where if you try to buy some off-brand ink, they would destabilize your printer. When somebody figured out what they were doing, they got into some big trouble. But that's what they were trying to do, was force you to buy their ink, their cartridges, and they knew that it didn't last very long. So those are the kind of things to think about. So all this really, all these concepts we're really talking about are just basically doing some research and trying to get away from impulse buying of things. Is really, if you think about the common denominator for all the things we've talked about, that's what it really comes down to, is do a little research and just don't buy it immediately. And we're not talking about, clothes, we're not talking about food here or things like that we need. We're not talking about, toilet paper. We're talking about the other purchases of something that we don't have to have today. And it's a substantial amount of money. And, that's really, when you get down to it, what we're talking about here. And then if I may just piggyback off what Petra said about, going shopping and, working off a list and trying to stay on your list, that's something that I'm sure every one of us has heard before. So if you look at my last bullet point here, I say shopping list is not just for groceries. So just think about it. Say if you're going to go out and buy some clothes and you have your mindset on buying a pair of slacks and some shoes to go with it, that's fine. You've made that decision before you've gone out there, and that's what you should do. But while you're there, don't get carried away and also buy a new belt, buy some socks, buy a blouse, and because that wasn't your plan when you left. So basically, shopping lists are not just for groceries. And there's been some research done by some college professors, and they say you can spend, their old saying is about don't go grocery shopping while you're hungry because you're going to buy more. But it actually also correlates to non-food items. And the research by some professors showed that we spend up to 60% more when we go out shopping for clothes or non-grocery items when we're hungry. So basically, I think we can take the two things we know from grocery shopping and really parlay them into all of our shopping, which is use a list and don't do it while you're hungry. It works for non-grocery items as well as grocery items. So just something to think about, some food for thought. I was very surprised when I found that out while I was, again, looking for some other ideas for this particular session. So just things to think about. Anything else in the shopping arena that anybody has some ideas that have worked for them or worked for some friends of theirs? Any other ideas we want to share? All right. Let's go to the last one we call around the house, but there's some things outside of the house too. Sort of the catch-all category here. So the first one is insurance, which I know we all love to spend money on insurance, and this one probably 80% of you already know this, but I just want to make sure for the other 20% or whatever, if you do have homeowners insurance and or renters insurance and car insurance, so if you have both of them, just make sure you're getting them with the same company. Geico has sort of made this, or Progressive, it's sort of made this now a little bit more known. It's called bundling. But basically, I don't care. I'm not telling you which insurance company to go to, but if you have your homeowner's insurance and your auto insurance with two different carriers, I would just suggest you go to both of them and say, hey, I want to have, my other coverage with you also. Go to both of them, see which one gives you a better rate. But I can almost promise you that both companies, you will pay less for both your coverages if you have them with the same company. It also makes it easier for you. You just have less bills. You have any claims or any processing to do, you go right to your one agent or one company. It makes it a lot easier for you, but it's just a simple little thing that will save you money if you don't have it already with the two put together. So easy one. So if indeed you feel that you really need to reduce your expenses a lot, right? The three areas where we spend most of our money on is cars, our house or where we live, and food, groceries. So, we've already talked about some, but this class is really more about, reducing expenses here, a little bit there. But if for some reason you're taking this class and you're saying, the reason I want this class is I need to drastically cut my expenses. I need to save $300 or $400 or $500 a month. How can I do that? The easiest way, especially is if you're transitioning to retirement and maybe you're married to have a significant other, you have two cars, a big way to cut down on expenses is only having one car instead of two cars. Or if you live in the city like I do and have lots of good access to public transportation, not having a car at all. And I'm guilty of that. I have a bus line and the L stop close to me, but we still have a car, but we just have one car. I've made that decision. I understand it, but I'm just, this class isn't so much for big drastic cutting of expenses, but if that's what you need to do, those are the areas to attack is downsizing your house, which is even more drastic. But it's a little bit easier as we transition into retirement, especially if you have two cars and you're not both using the car every day, to think about, can you just go down to one car? And you would be amazed how you can really make it work if you're not working full time, or if your pandemic employment has made it so you don't need a car, and going forward, you're not going to need a car. You're not going to need to drive to work 5 days a week. That's a good way to consider a heavy, healthy expense. Not only do you have the car expense itself, but you got the gas, you got the insurance, you got the maintenance on it. You have lots of other things just besides the car payment that can be reduced if you go from 2 cars to 1 car. So that's just a big thing that's really sort of outside of the class for most of us. But if anybody had that thought process in there, I just wanted to throw that out there. So exploring free activities. Free is one of my favorite words. And I thought I knew a lot of things about Chicago and free activities, but when I started developing this class a few months ago, we were already in the pandemic, but I just Googled free things to do around Chicago, and there was a lot more to do than I even thought. And a lot of these things I will enjoy doing, and I plan on doing once we get out of the pandemic situation that hadn't even crossed my mind. Now, I understand I live in a big city and there's lots of things to do, but even in smaller areas, you may be surprised if you Google, there might be, maybe you like to go on, nature hikes, and there might be some new parks or areas you didn't know about, or maybe they're a little further away, but it's worth the car drive to have you, go somewhere else. But just Google, and also if you go on vacation somewhere, Google, free activities in the area where you're going, and just see if there's anything you want to do anyway, and it, might be free, but just you would be surprised in a lot of things. I do that. I've done that before when we go on vacation, is look for, special deals, so to speak. You're on vacation somewhere for a short period of time. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time trying to save $2 on something. That's not the point. But there's something I want to do, and it's doesn't cost anything. I'm definitely going to go explore it while we're at some other city. So the next topic I have is, who are the Joneses anyway? So we know about that. That's keeping up with the Joneses. And for most of us, when we were, younger, 20, 25 years ago, for most of us in this class, keeping up with the Joneses was really our next door neighbors, people across the street, maybe a coworker or something like that. But we had a small group of people that we could want to maybe keep up with the Joneses. So, but now for the younger generation, and we sort of absorb that now, keeping up with the Joneses, with the internet, with Facebook, with Instagram, with all those things, the whole world is really the Joneses, or it can be the Joneses for us if we don't watch out and be careful. So the whole point of just bringing up is just making sure we're living our life for ourselves and not for others. I know it's easy to get carried away. But, I don't want to go too far into this, but just remember, it's best that we satisfy and enjoy ourselves and don't worry so much about some beautiful looking picture if it's not something we really want to enjoy, or we can really enjoy that much anyway. Just live within your means, live within what you want to do, and don't worry about other pictures out there in the world and what that happens. Lots of people can take great pictures, but do what you like, what you enjoy. And then don't forget the newer technologies while we're in there, the thermostats, the light bulbs. You buy some light bulbs now that cost 3 times as much, but they last 10 times as long. And also, as we get older, especially the light bulbs, you got to climb on the ladder to change. We don't need to change those again for 10 years, and may save some bigger medical expenses that we haven't even thought about. But, let's not, as we age, let's not be afraid to adapt the newer technologies. I think most of us, when we do something and buy a newer technology, even if we're replacing a blender or something like that, it's like, whoa, these blenders now really work a lot better than the old ones did. They work faster. So just not be afraid of the technologies. So the last one, I've talked about this in almost all the classes, and this actually has generated probably the most conversation. I thought it was sort of a little throwaway one, but a lot of people have not been familiar with it. But there's some automatic discount codes for the internet. So most of us know if we want to buy something at Land's End, we can type in Land's End coupons and we can go hunt for coupons for Land's End. Or if we want to go buy something, at some store where you buy clothes, you can type in that particular store and you can see about any coupons. You can try to punch in the codes. They may or may not work. But there are some vendors out there. And so first, I do say you have to download this onto your phone or your laptop. And so the one that I use is called Honey, Honey. like the food. And again, I'm not endorsing this particular product, but basically what happens if you download one of these, it understands whenever you go buy something on the internet, when you get into the shopping cart, it will say, do you want me to look for coupons? And it goes and looks for all the coupons for you. You don't need to do anything else. So it usually takes anywhere from 10 to 40 seconds, depending on how many coupons it looks for. And it will just run through everything it can find on the internet. It's doing all the searching for you. And it will come back and say, you know, we just added this coupon code, it saved you 20%, or you've got the best deal possible. We can't find anything better. But you know, why not? You're going to buy this product, you want it. Let's see if you can get a better price on it. And it just automatically, if you do download it, automatically is on your computer, and it will automatically do that once you get to the shopping cart and look for a better deal for what you bought. It's not going to say, here's something else you can buy similar or anything like that. It's just for the products you bought through the vendor you are at. It will tell you whether you can get a better discount than what you have now. And there's no cost for it, whatever. There's plenty of competitors. So if you just want to look on the internet, just, you know, look for something. Even if you type in honey, it will give you all the competitors for it also. You know, honey discount coupon code. Again, so just something to think about. So I don't know, has anybody used anything else besides honey, or they used honey and had any success? Anybody want to share their experiences with that?
Philip, I have a question.
Yes, Judy.
With honey and other vendors such as that, can they actually see your information in your computer or your shopping habits? Is there any potential for fraud for that?
Well, I think for the first part of your question, can they see your shopping habits? Yes. You know, just like if you sign into Facebook, they follow all kinds of things. So I'm sure honey is too, because, you know, you're telling them what you have. So yes. Now, as far as fraud, you know, that's why you want to do the research on the company. And before I hooked up honey onto my computer, I'm very leery. Like I say, I do some classes, you know, in regards to fraud and scams. So I'm, you know, very leery of that, of downloading anything onto your computer. So I did a lot of research on it. And I didn't put it on right away. Did some more research. I know also some credit card companies now have their own behind the scenes source. My mother has Capital One, and they keep on sending to her. They've got their own source, similar to what honey does. So it's already within your arena of things you have. It's within the credit card company of Capital One. I don't remember what they call it, but she's talked to me about it a couple times, whether she should get that or not. So yeah, they're going to be able to get your shopping habits. I'm sure they use it. I'm sure that they're in essence, you know, getting some information, but so those are the things you need to think about and weigh. As far as fraud itself, as long as you're getting a good one, and unless something happens to themselves, you know, it will be something that they're protecting. So I know it's a two-prong question and a two-prong answer. So yeah, we do need to be smart about everything. And I don't normally advocate downloading things onto your computer without being super cautious for that particular reason. So thanks for bringing that up, Judy.
Thank you.
So any other questions or comments? Yes, Melissa.
I get many used items from the store that runs Habitat for Humanity. You can save a lot of money that way. We've gotten lots of stuff. We even got a coffee pot blender.
Okay, with which, I didn't hear which company you were saving the money with,
Can
Melissa.
you
Which,
understand me?
okay. Well, that's good to know. I appreciate.
Habitat for Humanity runs the resource. They run a resource. There are many resources throughout the country.
Okay, so Melissa's connection is not real stable, but she's saying Habitat for Humanity. So I think that's doing a couple of things. It's also probably feeding into some charity things also. So it's, killing, or not, it's not a good word, but, doing two things at once, right? Saving money for yourself and probably helping a charity also. So great feedback, Melissa. Appreciate it so very much. All right, give just a few closing comments. So, it's up to you and your creativity, your wants and needs in regards to, reducing spending. These are just some ideas out there. There's lots of other ideas. Some of these might work for you. Some of them you don't even want to do. That's fine. It's just trying to generate more ideas, stimulate thought. And I appreciate some of you sharing some ideas like Melissa just did and Karen did earlier, and Judy, and asking questions. It really helps. And then there's the next question. Are there any ingrained shopping habits that you should shatter? Just think about it. Just because you did it the last 10 years doesn't mean you need to do it next year also. And then just be yourself. We talked about that. We're at the stage of our life that we just really need to impress ourselves. We don't need to impress anybody else. And remember also, if you need to save some money because you're spending more than you need, that's fine. But another way to look at this class is, if I can save money in one area that I'm not getting so much enjoyment out of, maybe I can spend it somewhere else where I do enjoy it more. I do some budgeting classes with Get Set Up, and that's one of the things we talked about. It's really, a lot of times it's funneling money into areas you enjoy more. So, if there's something that some ingrained habit that now you're spending $30 a month on because you just have been too forgetful, so to speak, to cancel it. If you now cancel, you can either save the $30 or you can spend $30 more on going out for restaurant food. You can go out for another dinner every month just based on what you save. So it's not only quote unquote saving money, but it's maybe reallocating money to a more enjoyable source. It doesn't mean you have to spend less. Just spend it in ways that are best and wisest for you and getting the most enjoyment for yourself. That's really what we're talking about here. So a few closing slides, and I'll open it up for any other questions or comments. But like I said earlier, I do some budgeting classes and some fraud fighting classes. So I'm conscious of that. And there's, other classes about staying safe online here with Get Set Up, etc. You will get some class notes from me, a little summary of this class. Obviously, it goes through Get Set Up, but you will get that. You'll also get the ability to do a little survey regarding this particular class. So I had to be honest with you, I love lots of good stars. If you think I did a great job, that's fine. But if you didn't think I did a great job, give it the correct rating. But more importantly for me is I pay a lot of attention to the comments, and I adapt and change classes based on comments that I have. So if you have 2 minutes to fill out the survey and add some comments about what you liked or what you might suggest changing, that would be great, because it's going to help me and it's going to help future participants as they continue to take this class. So that would be great. And then just in closing, spread the word about Get Set Up. Let friends, neighbors, coworkers, whatever that you think might get some value out of Get Set Up, make sure you share it with them. There's no cost to join, all those good things. And then also, if you have a particular topic that you think is of interest, you don't want to necessarily be a guide like myself and lead these classes, but you have some topic you might want to share once or twice with the Get Set Up community, let us know. We can have somebody like myself or somebody like Max be there and do all the things behind the scenes, set up the class, and then let you share whatever your ideas are that you want everybody to know about. So don't be afraid to think of it from that standpoint. So with that, I want to thank everyone. If you have any other questions, that would be great. It sort of ends the formal part of it, but I'll stay online for any questions or any comments anybody else has. And if you're going to leave, thanks so much for attending, and I hope you got some good ideas out of it.
Philip, thanks for a great class. This is Karen, and look for those little purple pods at Walmart. Your wife will love them, and I can buy, regular Folgers at Sam's, put it in a smaller container right next to the coffee pot, and just a little teaspoon is all you need to put that grounds in that little pot, and you can save lots of money.
Well, that's so good. Like I said, that's what we're here for. Everybody should learn something new every time, including me. And So I definitely appreciate it so much. And Melissa has added in a little bit more on the chat box for everybody about the Habitat for Humanity, what we talked about before.
Oh,
And
wonderful. Thank you.
their restore shops. Thank you so much, Karen. And I'm going to let my wife know about that. So, all right. Thanks. Any other comments? Thanks for attending, Karen. Thanks everyone for attending. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, but I'll stay on.
Hello, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me? This is Valentine. I was talking earlier. I guess you could not hear me. I thought I had unmute myself. I have a question. You said that you had mentioned a couple of other classes that you will be teaching as well. When will those classes be available?
Most of them come up every week. So, you can go on to the Get Set Up. They've got the search button up at the upper left. So like the budgeting classes, I have 2 budgeting classes. You can just type in budget and they'll pop up. Myself and a lot of my peers have numerous ones on scams and frauds, because that's very common now on the internet, and especially targeting people, 60 and above. So, you can type in searches, but usually most of the classes I give come up once a week from that standpoint. So the other thing you do is just, scroll through the class and look for the day, see what the classes are for that particular day. I give another one about sort of understanding money and investments. So most of my classes are sort of related somehow into the financial environment, but plenty of my peers have other classes, Valentine, that talk about many other things.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. Sounds interesting.
Okay. And I think in the future, they're working on it because of questions like you have. It's not there yet, but we've talked about this in some meetings. They're going to be able to, where you can just type in the guide's name and you'll be able to see all the classes that guide gives also. So that's something they're working on, which hopefully will come up in the not too distant future. So that'll be another way to do the search going forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed the class.
Sure. Thanks for your time. Thanks for participating.
No problem. Have a blessed one.
All right. Any other questions? Like I said, I'll stay on. I'm just going to stop sharing. But anything else anybody has? So, all right, I'll stay on for a couple more seconds and then I'm going to head off if we don't have any questions. But again, thanks everyone for attending and hope to see you soon in some other classes. I also attend some classes from the other end of the camera too. So I might see you in one of those, as well as some other classes that I'm the guide on. So thank you so much. All right. Yeah. So I do some architecture too. Somebody says, and actually I have Melissa, I have a new architecture class coming week after next that just popped up for the first time. So it's about just type in architecture and you'll get it. So I have a new architectural class on some other topic. So thanks so much for plugging that also. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care and have a good day.